Well, I took a shower and put makeup on just for you, so let's do this. Yeah, normally when I'm on the farm with the parents, it's pretty minimal maintenance.
Well,
Enlightening.
I guess I'll introduce us first. Welcome to Glad to Talk Sports. I'm your host, Miro with my co-host, Morgan Barkas. Catching my breath. It was a busy day. I coach soccer in my spare time, so had both my teams playing today, so I had to scramble back. And you were also traveling, Morgan?
Yes. What level? Mine was for fun. I got to see my parents and my dog. The kiddos, are they kiddos or are you coaching adults?
I have two teams. One's 13-year-olds, one's 17-year-olds. So they both kicked ass today, which is good.
Because I mean, I feel like many kiddos that play sports, especially boys, they're like, I'm going to be a professional baseball player when I grow up. And the chances of that are like 1 in 2 million. Uh, do you ever coach people where you think, yeah, that kid might make it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I got a platform called Soccer Family Agent, soccerfa.com, and that's actually a course that is uh I devised to, and it's funny we're going to talk about the draft today
Hmm.
because in the soccer world there's no draft system. Soccer teams don't rely on drafts to recruit talent. They're recruiting talent from the age of 5, 10 years old. So the onus is on having a representative or an agent that is going to open doors for you professionally for the men's and women's, boys and girls side. So the Soccer Family Agent course, I was a former FIFA agent. I actually filmed like a 8 module, 13-hour course that empowers parents to become agents of their young soccer players. And it's been pretty successful. I licensed it to elite academies. And because most parents don't realize that, again, and it's funny that we're talking about the draft today, because in the European soccer world and largely in the US soccer world, even though there is an MLS draft, Major League Soccer teams don't rely on drafts. They don't. If you're going to play college soccer, you probably won't end up being a professional. It's the reverse of NFL, NBA. So, so yeah, absolutely. I come across players all the time that I identify as, potential professionals down the road. But it's so competitive. There's millions and millions of soccer players and only so many spots. So it's a very valid question. And some players, it's not even about talent; it's a sheer numbers game. So having someone represent you and open doors and connect the dots with teams here and teams overseas, that's how you become a professional.
Say more about the college thing. You said if they're really great, can they get a scholarship to go to college and play soccer? And that also means they're not going to be recruited for professional?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on the women's side, yeah, there's thousands and thousands of scholarships for soccer in college, both in the women's game and the men's game, and they do, you get a free ride or a partial free ride. But when it comes to Major League Soccer, they'll only recruit maybe, I think about 70, 75 players out of 20,000 that are in college every year. And out of those 75, maybe 35 will be, end up in the pros because yeah, in soccer, they need to recruit kids younger, much younger, like in their teenage years, and then basically groom them to become professionals. And even on the
Mm.
women's side, the top professional women's league in the US, the National Women's Soccer League, the NWSL, they actually abolished their draft. So they don't even draft collegiate women anymore. They just recruit at the grassroots level, and they don't rely on a draft at all.
Well, I don't know much about soccer or women's soccer. And Abby Wambach, big fan. I listen to her and her wife's podcast. So I only hear a little bit about soccer through her and just what it was like playing soccer. And actually, she doesn't really talk about that part of it much, just like how aggressive she was as a player and that she really took to soccer like a fish to water. And I don't remember her saying anything about how she was or not recruited. So I don't even remember her story and how she did get into the big leagues.
It's interesting, and the recruitment is going to be our topic. But before we get into that,
Hmm.
uh, I just want to address a couple of things from last episode. So
Sure.
I got two bones to pick. One's with you, and one's with myself. So
Okay, go for it.
the first one, which I texted you about, was the background when we were talking, and I gave a thumbs up, and there was some icon that came up, and you commented how my the platform or whoever put that thumbs up came up. But the later one, I'm editing our podcast, and this fireworks show comes on behind us, and as I'm looking at that in bewilderment, I'm thinking, why didn't Morgan tell me? Because I didn't notice it for some reason, and all you did was like give me this kind of cheeky smile and just kind of pretend like it didn't happen. So that's my bone to pick with you.
I don't know if it's Apple. I don't know how or why. And I remember being on, it must be because it was like I would be on a FaceTime call. Was it FaceTime or was it? I can't remember, but I just remember being on a video call with someone and all of a sudden a reaction happened. And I thought, where did that come from? And it was like, well, it's not you, it's not me. So, and now I'm noticing on my Mac, I can have turn off like video reactions. So apparently, if you do certain gestures or say certain words, whatever video platform you're on, and I can't remember what it is, it reacts for you via like
Apparently.
emojis or whatever. When the fireworks went off behind you and you were like really into something, so I didn't want to interrupt you. But at the same time, I was like, is he seeing it and ignoring it also? Should I ignore it? Should I acknowledge it? I don't want to cut him off. And when you and I texted about after, I could not stop laughing because I rewatched it because you're like talking and these fireworks went off and you kind of disappeared for a second as the fireworks took over the screen. And after the fact, especially after I found out you didn't notice it and you didn't just ignore it. You had no idea. I could not stop laughing. And even when I retold the story to other people, I was laughing so hard and then they would start laughing because it's just funny. It
was pretty ridiculous. Like, people are going to be thinking, this guy likes to fireworks himself, not thumbs up himself, fireworks himself. He's like full of himself, this guy.
I know, but I think some people at this point know that, again, I can't remember what program it is that is doing this, but it's like embedded in video calls now, and you almost have to turn it off to avoid it.
So you didn't tell me because you just thought I was so into the moment and it didn't need to be.
I didn't want to interrupt you, and I also thought maybe he noticed, but he's just ignoring it too.
Brilliant. That's all right. I'm good with that. And the other bone to pick is with myself because we were talking about soccer and you were telling me about your friend in Morocco and about the dogs, and they're going to clean up and eradicate all these dogs, which is upsetting, especially to your mom. And I'm like, World Cup in Morocco? Don't think so, Morgan. And even like, I don't know how I didn't pick it up on Google because I, looked down on my computer and typed it in. But you're absolutely right. Morocco was awarded the FIFA World Cup in conjunction with Portugal and Spain. So you schooled me on that one.
Well, and I found out last week also, there's someone that I communicate with on Instagram, and he sent me a message because one of my best friend is in Morocco, and then he's going to be moving to Morocco. And he said something, and I had mentioned something about Spain, and so he said, well, actually, did you know, he sent me this cool video on why, I mean, everywhere else there's bridges and like you can make connections, and between Spain and Morocco there is only ferry currently. Right. There is no bridge, and there was one of those like Schoolhouse Rock like videos that was kind of silly with a little cartoon character explaining why, because of just like geography and how the earth moves, and I guess like the vibrations or something in the water, they can't build a bridge because structurally it wouldn't be sound. Yep. And by the World Cup on 2030, the plan is to have an underground tunnel between Spain and Morocco because it's one of the only places where you can't connect the rest of Europe to Morocco. And I thought that's going to be awesome if they have some kind of train or some kind of underground something that will connect those two countries. It'll make it that you won't have to fly. You can go by train almost everywhere within Europe and then even into Africa. That would be really cool.
Yeah, that is
cool. If that actually happens. I don't know if it will for sure, but that seems really cool.
I don't know if they can do it in 5 years, but yeah,
That's
it'd
what
be
I was wondering. I
interesting.
thought, boy, that's a heck
Yeah,
of a project to get done by 2030. And I mean,
yeah.
yeah,
All right. So today,
yeah.
now we mentioned the draft. So funny you mentioned that because that is kind of like a staple in American sports. And see, two things that blew me away when I knew about it long before I moved to the States, but the first thing that has always intrigued me is just the whole collegiate sports system, which again is ingrained in American sports. It's historic, it's cultural. You know, players. I mean, college sports is huge. It's got its own massive following. You know, a lot of people prefer college basketball and football over NFL and NBA. But I always shook my head in just astonishment at how the whole collegiate system was set up in terms of just pure exploitation of athletes because it's become a multi-billion-dollar sport, and they're filling 80, 100,000 seat stadiums. March Madness is $1 billion business. College football is $1 billion business plus. Coaches like Nick Saban were getting paid like 10 million, and the athletes were not only not getting paid, and I brought this up when I first moved here over 15 years ago. Like, how can you not pay the athletes? And that while they're there for an education, it's not about that. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. But on top of that, they were restricted from even earning money from sponsorships or anything else. And they were so strict on it that you couldn't even have anybody, well, you know, people got around it and got secret gifts and money and cars and all that stuff. But if you got caught, you were basically, lose your scholarship. And I remember when I first moved here, I met this soccer player, and he was telling me that his brother was an NFL kicker, and they went to lunch where he went to lunch with his brother and his NFL agent and his parents, and he was a soccer player at UCLA. And he said that at the end of the lunch, he had to make sure that he got his own receipt for his burger and Coke from the restaurant, because if somebody reported him with this agent and he had a burger and Coke bought for him, he could have lost his scholarship, which I just thought was bananas, absolutely ridiculous. And funny enough, now I'm not sure if you've heard in the last couple of years, NIL, name, image, and likeness, has exploded. Are you aware now that collegiate athletes get paid?
I don't know the ins and outs, and I remember it was a big deal that they were finally going to get paid. The only thing that's confusing to me then is because you think, okay, the part of it, and maybe they don't care. I don't know that maybe it's a 1-to-1 or whatever, but I think part of it is I'm still carrying around a lot of student loan debt because I didn't have any special skills. I just wanted to go get a higher education. The nice thing is, someone that is an athlete gets to go get that education for free. And
Yeah,
so I thought, I guess I see it as an exchange. You get to go to school for free and play sports. I just had to go to school and pay the way because I don't have any special skills.
right.
And so I could see that. And at the same time, like you're saying, it's also a business and they're
Yeah,
working for a business and they're not getting anything to be a part of this business. Now they're just
right.
volunteers at this business. So, I could see where that would be unfair. But anyway, yeah, I don't know the ins and outs. I just remember that it was a big deal that college athletes were going to start getting paid.
Yeah, and they're actually not getting paid. They're just allowed to get sponsorship money now, which is
Oh, okay.
NIL, name, image, and likeness. And it's just exploded now. You got guys driving around in Lamborghinis and, getting money from boosters and all that kind of fun stuff. But I don't think they're still getting a slice of the
Oh,
broadcast
okay.
pie or anything like that. But at
Got it.
least they're getting paid now. So, and the other thing that was going to be today's topic of discussion is the draft system, which is obviously an extension of collegiate sports. So, as I've discussed here, NFL, NBA, they recruit all their talent, 100%, apart from the overseas guys, but NFL especially recruit 100% of their talent from the NFL draft. And
Mhm.
you got to go to college. And I think NBA, I think, has a mandatory now because LeBron bypassed college altogether. And they said, no, 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 no. You got to go for at least 1 year or 2 years in the NFL or three. But anyway, I wanted to discuss that because as he, I'm just so blown away by the draft itself, which nobody ever questions. And I have always thought, just like the restrictions they had on collegiate athletes being able to, get their own sponsorships and be citizens and be able to transact and do business. I think the draft is illegal. I think it's a restraint of trade. It's forced employment, and I can't believe that nobody's even talking about it. I wrote an article about 3 years ago for the Sports Business Journal, and when I researched it, no one had ever mentioned it. No one discusses it. Even in the years leading up to NIL, people were saying, it's time for athletes to get paid. But with the draft system, nobody even questions it. And I was so hard pressed to find someone to interview. I found an employment lawyer, and I found today's guest, Trevor Brown, who had written a piece in college, in law school. And that was kind of the only material that I had about the draft, which is coming up. And that's why it's a topic of discussion for us. The NFL draft is coming up. Everyone's excited. They're like, this is great. And essentially, it's basically it's a it's a restraint of trade in the sense that you have these players with a skill, a talent to play football, and if they want to go and play pro, they are forced to put themselves into a draft, and the best players go to the worst teams because the draft picks are given to the worst performing teams who can either draft a player or trade the draft pick for. And I just can't believe no one's questioning it. And I think it's inevitable. I think a player, so you know who Deion Sanders is, right?
Mhm.
So he's got a son that plays for him, and he's coming up. He's going to potentially go high in the draft. But I think it's a matter of time until like someone like a Shedeur Sanders, his son, says, well, I don't want to go to the Cleveland Browns. They got the one of the highest picks and most likely draft him. And I don't want to play for a crummy organization like them. On top of that, you get sent to a city, to a crappy team that's got a high draft pick. And then your salary is capped for the first 3 or 4 years for the first contract. I mean, you've got no say in where you're going and who you're going to work for. And it's funneled and structured in a way that you're going to the worst team and you're going to be restricted in how much you're going to earn, and it's already set in stone. You can't even negotiate.
Okay, now all of a sudden I was following and then I got confused because I'm thinking of Jerry Maguire, which is a Hollywood version of all of this.
Yeah.
And I'm also thinking, well, two things. One, do they only, I'm sure they televise all drafts, but I'm thinking, I've
Hmm.
never seen a hockey draft. I've never seen a
Oh, there
baseball
is
draft.
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it doesn't seem as hyped up as football.
Yeah.
Football seems like the draft to watch on TV if you're going to. The other question I have was, wait a second. I feel like if you going back to Jerry Maguire, I'd have to watch the movie again. And it seemed like parents in the draft, the guys going out for the draft, I didn't realize because it seemed like they were really juiced up if they got
Yeah.
drafted.
Yeah. They
Like
are.
it was a really big
Yeah.
deal. So it's not so much that the worst team picked them, it's that they got drafted at all. Is
Yeah.
that why they're so excited?
That's a great question. And I was going to actually bring that up. And
Okay.
like I said, it's so ingrained and it's so cultural and historic that that's the only way Americans know how to recruit talent for these leagues, that people are juiced. They are jazzed. Like, I'm going to the NFL, I'm going to the NBA. But what
Mhm.
happens when a guy isn't so excited and wants to challenge it? And what's going to happen then when he hires a lawyer and say, oh, I want to play for the Dallas Cowboys and they want to draft me. I want to negotiate my own contract. I don't want to go to any other team. What's going to happen then? And I think that's inevitable. It's just a matter of time before a player says, I'm not happy with that. I want a say in where I'm going to go, how many years I'm going to sign for, and how much money I'm getting paid.
On the back end, can the teams negotiate? Can they say like Cleveland Browns, I'll pay you X amount
Oh,
of
yeah, they can
dollars if
trade the
I
draft
can?
pick. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like trading humans. You know what I mean? Like the Cleveland Browns, they have a top or 1, 2, or 3 draft pick, and any draft pick you can trade to another player because, like, there might be some quarterbacks, there might be positional players that they need, and say, well, let's trade for that player rather than going in the draft. So another team, they're always wheeling and dealing. I mean, trade draft picks are currency; they're worth something. And when a team, sometimes they tank towards the end of the season because they want to lose more games to make sure they get the highest draft pick. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. It's like the Twilight Zone. And ineptitude. And you see these GMs of these top draft picks that they're representing an inept organization that come onto these stages like, we've got the number one draft pick. Yeah, why? Because you're the
You're
worst
the
team and you're
worst.
the
Yeah.
most mismanaged team. Like a couple of years ago, I think last year was Chicago, and they've got the best quarterback in the draft because they were the worst team. And the GM goes up there like all high and mighty and proud, and it's just ridiculous.
Again, kind of a dum-dum here in
No,
all
no.
of this. And I'm thinking, wait now, I've heard of and don't know the details of when folks get traded. Can they get like, let's say whatever the Chicago Bears draft somebody and they're like, yay, we got the best quarterback in the league. Is there a time limit on that? So then a year in, the Dallas Cowboys or I don't know, the Patriots can go, actually, we'll pay this much of money to get him and we'll release him from this terrible team he got drafted. When does that happen? What are the timelines there?
That happens all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a great question. All the power is with the teams. All the power is with the teams. So the guys getting drafted, they don't know if they're going to go first pick, second pick, 30th pick. Like Tom Brady, he went like 100 and something. They've got no say. It's all the clubs, the teams that have the say. They have the power, and they can trade draft picks. They can recruit somebody and then trade them the next day. They can trade them anytime. They can cut them. I mean, it's just all the power is with the teams.
What's interesting if you're like, hey, I was the first draft pick. Yeah, for the worst team. So in a way,
That's
it's like,
exactly right.
I'm the best player for the worst team in the country. Like, it seems
Yeah.
like it's not, you'd almost want to be like the 75th pick because at least you're going to be on a better team. You know what I mean? Like, it seems counterintuitive to be, yay, I'm the first pick, and yet I'm going to be playing for literally the worst team in the league. That seems kind of stupid, really.
The whole draft system is you're absolutely right. It's just stupid to me because let's go to the soccer world where they don't rely on drafts. They can recruit someone when they're 15 years old. They can recruit at any age. They don't have to go to college. They're not forced to go to college. So McKenna Whittam, she is 14 years old. She recently, last few weeks, made her professional debut in the top women's league in the US, the National Women's Soccer League. She's 14 years old. Okay? Imagine last year in Major League Soccer, there was a 15-year-old Sullivan who made his debut for Major League Soccer for the Philadelphia Union. Now imagine these two kids who are now professionals, 14 and 15 years old. Imagine they had to go to college, complete a year or two, and then get drafted. They'd be waiting 6 more years. 6 years, and they could get injured in the meantime. They could regress. They may not have that trajectory that they're going to maintain their development and have that opportunity 6 years from now. Players should be able to control their own destinies like these two players in American soccer. One 14-year-old girl went to National Women's Soccer League, made her debut, 15-year-old boy for Philadelphia Union in Major League Soccer. That's what should be happening in the US. The Dallas Cowboys want to sign a hotshot 15-year-old quarterback in Texas, put him on their roster at age 15. They should be able to do it. This kid should be able to negotiate his own contract. They should not be forced to go to college and hopefully not get injured and hopefully keep developing in an environment that's not a professional environment and hope that, well, they get into the draft and then who knows where they're going to end up, and then their salary's capped for a number of years. The whole system is so antiquated, and I think it's a matter of time before somebody challenges it.
The draft pick, the way it is almost inverted, where it's the worst teams get to pick the best folks if they want. They have this pool of all these people and they can pick the best of the best right out the gate. Is that to try to even out the talent fairness, if you will, so not all the best teams are picking the best people and then the Cleveland Browns are always terrible? Is that the point?
It's all about parity, yeah. So, which is a contradiction because there's nothing fair about these players that are shipped off to a place they probably dread going to. So, yeah, it's
Yeah.
supposed to level out. But, and we'll talk about this in the coming weeks in our next segment, in our next podcast. This is where there's a lack of accountability in front offices in professional sports franchises that rely on draft. You would, in the soccer world, if you end up in, not in Major League Soccer, but in every country aside from the US, if your team ends up in the bottom three at any given season, you get relegated to the minor leagues. So there's accountability. And when that happens, the front office is turned upside down. In American sports, you can finish dead last for 10 years in a row and still have the same mismanagement in the front office that as long as they've got a connection with the ownership, in the case of someone like the Dallas Cowboys, the family is the management. You know what I mean? Jerry Jones owns a team and he's general manager, which is crazy, and his sons run the show, so they'll never get fired. And they've got, ironically enough, the Cowboys are the most valuable sports franchise on the planet. On the planet. More than Manchester United, more than Real Madrid. Yeah. They've had they've not been to a Super Bowl in 20 years. Okay, I think they've had about 3 or 4 playoff wins in 20 years, and they sell out their stadium every week, 100,000 people, sell the most merchandise. Front office accountability.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, going back to the worst team gets to pick the best person, isn't it in other sports, for instance, like F1 or other kind of racing, you get to compete, right? So if you've been consistently the best, you get to be first in the lineup, right? Isn't that how, or am I wrong here?
No, but every other sport in other countries, it's direct to the talent. You just recruit the talent. There's no
Mm.
restrictions. If you're Real Madrid, teams like Real Madrid and Manchester United, they're recruiting young kids from all over the world. They have academies where they develop their own talent. These NFL and NBA teams, they don't have junior academies. They don't recruit kids at, the age of 12, 13 like soccer teams do. They don't spend anything on like soccer teams do in terms of developing their own talent. That's where the accountability is. How's your scouting at that year and age? You know what I mean? You got to be recruiting these guys at a young age, and in the case of soccer, the women's soccer, these young girls, putting them in your academy, developing them, not just relying on a draft where hopefully you're the worst team and get the highest draft pick. It's crazy. Like, it makes no sense to me whatsoever, and yet nobody talks about it. Nobody discusses it, and it's just ongoing because it's ingrained in American sports.
And the college thing, do you know why they're required to go to some? Is it just because you proved you can follow through on an educate, or because it's better to be educated in a higher education? Why is that required? Do you know?
That's a great question, and one that I can't answer, but I suspect it's because you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. So, where would collegiate sports be if the NBA and NFL suddenly said, you know what, we're going to allow recruiting from high schools?
Oh, that makes sense now. Okay, because college sports wouldn't be as exciting if they weren't required to go to college. If they went right from high school to that makes sense. That makes sense. I didn't even think of that. Okay.
So, college guy says to NFL guy, hey, listen, you mind letting us keep these guys for a couple of years? We'll put them on the TVs, sell a few jerseys, and then we'll let you have them. And the NFL like, you know what? That's not too bad because if we didn't have you funneling them through, we'd have to kind of develop them ourselves, and we don't want that. We don't want to spend extra money developing talent. So spend a year or two in the collegiate game. They can develop a bit more, age a year or two, and then it's a match made in sports, American sports heaven anyway.
Do you really think it could be turned on its head as long as it's been going on?
I think so. And the article I wrote was all about NIL and empowering athletes. And now that these guys are earning millions of dollars in college,
Yeah.
they can get themselves some pretty high priced lawyers and say, I don't want to go to the Cleveland Browns. I want to go to the Cowboys or a better team. And I'm just not going to do it. So I think it's a matter of time before someone challenges it.
All right, so then let's go to someone like LeBron. He gets recruited. I'm assuming he had to go through some kind of draft process.
No, he was one of the last ones that bypassed. He was ready to go at age 18. Kobe Bryant did as well. So there was,
Oh.
these really special generational players that, said, I don't want to there's no reason for me to go to college. When I finish high school, I'm going straight to the pros. And they still went in the draft, though. They still had to be drafted.
Well, that's what I'm
Okay, so
saying. So they didn't bypass the draft; they bypassed
no,
college.
right.
So that being said, let's say, you have all the NBA teams and the worst one gets first choice and they go, well, this kid's amazing. We'll take him. Where did LeBron start and how did he end up playing for the best teams in the country? I mean, you had the Miami Heat and then the LA Lakers no, he was with Cleveland though, right? In his hometown for a while?
Yeah, he got drafted by Cleveland. So he still went in the draft. And eventually, I think after 7 to 10 years, you become an unconditional free agent. But you've got to go through a lot of years and several contracts before you can become an unconditional free agent, which to me is also a restraint of trade and I think is also illegal. Uh, Soccer had a similar system about 20 years ago in Europe, and they would say a soccer player would sign a 5-year deal, finish his 5 years, and then he still had a price tag on his head. So if someone else wanted to sign him, the team that finished his employment with, they would attach this thing called a compensation fee, saying, "Well, we helped develop him, and we want to be compensated." So they would have to figure out a compensation fee, and a lot of times it needed to be, arbitrated by a third party. And one player, Mark Bosman, said, "To hell with this. Like, I shouldn't have a price tag on me. It's like this is a restraint of trade. I've finished my contract. I want to go to a new team. They don't want to pay a compensation fee. They want to hire me, but my team is asking for a ridiculous compensation fee. I want to be a free agent." So he spent years and ended his career because he went to court and he challenged it, and it took years. But he won in the European Union court, and it became known as the Bosman ruling. And that meant from then on, any player in Europe that finished their contract, they were an unconditional free agent. And it was all because Mark Bosman challenged it.
And sacrificed his career. You know what
Yeah.
it made me think of was what do they call that when in some cultures where you get married and the family has to pay the money?
Oh,
Right?
God, what's that word?
Yeah. And it was like, that's like, yes, you can marry her and you have to give us a cow or a certain amount of money or like
Dowry.
dowry. That's what it reminded me of when you were saying that. I was like, boy, this sounds kind
I
of,
love it.
yeah,
A
like
dowry.
we
Let's call it a
own
dowry.
him. And so you have to pay us a dowry to get him. We're not going to just let him be his own person and get his own job.
I love it. See, this is why I pay you the big bucks, Morgan.
No bueno. He's not going to just pop in like Benj. I loved that. Maybe. I have
Oh, we got someone. Oh,
hey.
finally.
I've been here for a while now, but
sorry, man.
Everything you were saying, Trevor.
I could hear you guys the whole time. I was like, I feel like this is a good time for me to hop in, but
Yeah.
Well, welcome.
All right, so welcome, Trevor. We've got Trevor Brown, who's joining our discussion. I'll let you introduce yourself, Trevor.
my name's Trevor Brown. I'm an attorney in Massachusetts. I have a specialization in sports law and sports gambling.
Oh, well, there you go. Are you for or against sports gambling?
I'm all for it. I think the biggest thing is that it provides valuable tax dollars to the states, and a lot of it in Massachusetts goes towards the education fund. So who am I to say no?
Great. Okay, great.
All right, so Morgan and I have been having a pretty spirited discussion the last half an hour or so. And Trevor, I, of course, interviewed you for the Sports Business Journal article I did a few years ago. So you're quite familiar. And I was telling Morgan when I sat down to research this, because when I first moved to the States, as I was saying earlier, two things just blew me away. The fact that collegiate athletes weren't getting paid, and the second one was that this thing called a draft existed where you just reward ineptitude and force players to go to a city that they probably don't care to go to and play for the worst mismanaged team in the NFL or the NBA. So I did all this research on the internet, and I found an employment lawyer in New York who uh, who wrote something about it, and then I found Trevor, and I thought these are the only two people in America that have voiced an opinion about it, and it's in sync with mine. So Trevor, talk to me.
Yeah, so I heard a little bit about your guys' conversation talking about the NFL draft. I know Morgan posed the question that what is the restraint on trade in the context of the NFL draft? Generally speaking, a restraint of trade is an activity that tends to limit a party's ability to enter into transactions. So basically, in terms of the NFL draft or the context of professional sports, it's limiting these players' abilities to advocate for themselves for fair terms, fair contracts, and getting their total value. As Miro said before, and to kind of echo his point, these players come out of college and are limited by salary caps, by salary suppression tactics, where certain players, even if, like he said, the Chicago Bears get Caleb Williams, or even the Commanders getting Jaden Daniels, two of the best quarterback prospects we've seen in a long time, they have to sign for less than quarterbacks that have been in the league for a decade. But the reason for that is something we'll go into later called collective bargaining agreements.
And that's the other point that I wanted to discuss with Morgan. So the collective bargaining agreement is the players' union, essentially, and they are supposed to look out for the players, and the players sign on to become these union members, agreeing to the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, which facilitates this whole, I think, illegal structure.
Have you, in your experience, Trevor, had anyone say, this is kind of unfair and I'd like to fight it, or am I the only one that is seeing this?
So I grew up around sports. I played college baseball in college and football. Never NFL draft or MLB draft good, but that was always the dream as a kid. I think sports fans are so infatuated with the idea of, hey, even though my team's bad, we got a shot next year. Imagine Cavaliers fans back in 2003, like, we're going to get LeBron. And he was the greatest prospect we've ever seen. And obviously, over the course of his 20-plus year career, we've seen how good he has been. But imagine if he went to a team like the Pistons, who were good in 2003. Like, how much better would they have been? And how much better would some of these other teams be if they could go out and sign players for any amount of money they wanted? I think the biggest thing is that sports fans, I don't think they're necessarily complicit, but I think sports fans are very excited about it, so they kind of turn a blind eye. And not a lot of people fully understand the legal dynamics that go behind the NFL draft. Because if I say, hey, the NFL draft isn't fair because of antitrust violations, what does that mean to the average sports fan that isn't an attorney?
What does it mean?
So basically, I guess I'll take a step further back there. Basically what antitrust law is governed by the Sherman Act, which was created to prohibit anti-competitive practices in business in order to promote fair competition in the marketplace. So basically, in layman's terms, there are a set of rules that make it so that business can work fairly across competitive markets. We don't want people having monopoly on certain markets, and we want to make sure that people aren't colluding in order to drive up prices to affect consumers. However, in terms of the current draft model, the NFL draft itself violates Section 1 of the Sherman Act. So this section basically says that every contract in restraint of trade that we've talked about before, or commerce among the states, it's declared to be illegal if there is a restraint of trade. And as I said before, it's limiting a party's ability to enter transactions. What the draft does is an unreasonable restraint because it allows owners to suppress salaries, it prohibits owners from bidding on the best college players, and if not for the draft, players can negotiate for more lucrative contracts, and prior to entering these sports leagues, they'd also be able to choose where they go. I mean, nothing against Utah, for example, but right now the best player in college basketball is Cooper Flagg. Utah is the worst team in the NBA. The NBA draft is a little different. They have a lottery process where any team that doesn't make the playoffs has a chance at getting the first pick, but usually the worst team still gets the first pick. I have a feeling Cooper Flagg doesn't want to go play basketball in Utah when he could play for the Lakers, or could play for the Celtics, or any of these big market teams where you're going to get more in endorsements and bigger supermax contracts.
Well, and win. I mean, I would imagine
And win.
most athletes they love competition and they want to win.
I think it's exactly what it is too. However, they don't have a choice. So you can say, hey, I'm not going to go into the draft. Like Cooper Flag still has 3 more years to play in college basketball, and I think with the existence of NIL, it helps a little bit because he can probably make more in NIL deals in his next couple of years than he would on his rookie salary. However, once you get your off your rookie contract and you're good, then you're making $50 million a year. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the
Yeah.
pull. Plus, every kid has a dream. I mean, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a professional athlete. These kids do too. And you don't want to waste your time in college if you get injured when you have the chance at a $300 million contract for your fourth or fifth year in the NBA.
Sure. Now, these endorsements that they're able to get as college athletes, you're saying their rookie salary maybe isn't all that great. Can they keep those sponsorships and continue to make crazy money outside of their salary?
Yeah, players still have the ability to sign these endorsement deals, and a lot of them probably do carry them through college.
Sure.
But only the players like the Cooper Flags of the world who have national media attention are able to get like a ton of money for these endorsements while in college.
Oh,
Most
sure.
players would benefit from having the NBA salary versus these endorsements. So you have to be like the best of the best and the face of the sport in college to be able to make this kind of money.
Right. That makes sense. Okay. Now, you two know each other, obviously. Did you collaborate on any articles, or what did you kind of learn from each other and how
Yeah,
you
I
connected?
interviewed Trevor. It was, like I said, when I Googled illegal NFL draft, his name come up, and it was a paper that he wrote. And like I said, there was nothing there for from any mainstream writer or reporter or sports media outlet, and I was just blown away that I could barely find anybody to talk about it, because apparently there's nothing wrong with the draft and nobody's complaining about it. And I don't know
Mhm.
if you heard my earlier spiel about Mark Bosman and the Bosman ruling and what that did to soccer. I wanted to ask you, Trevor, why do you think that no one has challenged that?
So, obviously, like my article touched base on people challenging back before Yazoo Smith was an NFL player that challenged it in 1968. And ultimately, that challenge failed because of collective bargaining agreements that we talked about very briefly before. What a collective bargaining agreement is an agreement between the leagues and players that they bargain the rules of basically commerce and trade in the sport in order to kind of skirt or go around these antitrust violations. And what antitrust law says is that if two people in a labor union, employees and employers, are able to agree on the terms of contracts and exactly how everything's going to be laid out, then the court's not going to intervene with that. So in the Yazoo Smith case, what happened is that the first NFL Players Union, I think it was sometime in the 50s, and this case was about a decade later. And even though he won in district court, when it went up on appeal, the appeals court said, "Well, your union body was able to negotiate the terms of your employment, and because of that, you're stuck to that. You can't enter into NFL early. You're not able to have go anywhere you want in the draft." And the reason why he brought this case is because he got injured almost immediately in his career. It was a neck injury, and basically they said that, oh well, you're only entitled to this amount of money, and it's because he wasn't able to negotiate that, but the players union did.
Hmm.
So I brought up the case of 14-year-old McKenna Whittam. I don't know if you heard, she made her debut as a 14-year-old a few weeks ago in the National Women's Soccer League. And I was telling Morgan that, imagine she was forced to go to college for a year or two and forced into a draft, which is still 5 years away. She's ready to play pro now, apparently. Um, is there any avenue for a player at the age of 15, 16, 17, or even 18 to say, look, I don't want to join a union. I just want to make myself available. And if it's the Dallas Cowboys or whoever, I just want to bypass unions, bypass drafts. I just want to go direct to the employer. Is that possible?
I don't think it's possible. I won't say never. I won't say it's impossible because we haven't seen a legal challenge that's really tried to push that boundary. The biggest thing is that you wouldn't be able to frame it as an antitrust violation. So that's the biggest thing. You have to avoid at all costs saying it's an antitrust case. There was something similar that happened in, I believe it was 2004. There was a running back that was the best in college named Maurice Claret. And with Maurice Claret, he challenged the rules where you had to be out of high school for 3 years in NFL terms in order to go to the draft. His first year, he was the best running back in football. His second year, he was suspended, and he said, "Look, I don't want to waste more time being away from the NFL, so I want to go into the NFL now." However, the way he framed that case was from an antitrust standpoint, and they decided in that case that even college players that are going into the NFL, even though they're not a part of the NFL union yet, those terms are still negotiated by the union, therefore they have to stand by them. I think my best legal argument would be, and I bet you there's attorneys that know more about age discrimination cases than me, but I would try to frame it as an age discrimination claim because at that point, antitrust doesn't protect against that. So if he said, "Look, I'm 18 years old, and you guys are trying to say," or at that time he's probably 20, "I'm 20 years old, and you guys are trying to say I'm too young to play," even though they have that rule that's negotiated, at least it would be heard. The argument would be heard, and it wouldn't be able to be kind of pushed to the side because of antitrust. Now, there might be other legal hurdles that come up, but that's the case that really pops into my mind when I think of another way to frame it. He might have had better luck in a discrimination law context because it is well settled that unions will be held jointly liable with employers under federal discrimination statutes.
Now, have you
Hey,
either one of you gotten pushback or negative feedback or people that kind of attack you for even questioning any of this? Because people seem real quick to have opinions on certain topics.
I have friends. When I wrote the article, I sent it to them obviously because I was proud of it, and they said, "Well, how is it illegal?" And I tried to explain it to them, and they thought it was kind of silly. They're like, "Well, why would the best teams be able to get the best players?" And I'm like, "Because it's fair for the players. They should be able to advocate for themselves and their own rights, and not have a governing body that's trying to advocate for hundreds of players, advocate for their rights." I did have one person, I can't even remember their name, not that I would name drop them anyway, but they like kind of attacked the articles, saying that it was ridiculous to say that you have to go sue the players union or find some other legal avenue to avoid it, because they said it's well settled in law that the collective bargaining protects against the antitrust violation of the NFL draft. While I understand that, it doesn't necessarily mean it's fair. It's just mean that it's the way that it has been for so long, and without any pushback, it's always going to stay that way.
that's a great question, Morgan. And for me, I think it's fear of the unknown that people just ignore it. It's like what I was talking about with college athletes getting paid. The pushback for decades was it'll ruin college sports. And it really didn't. Nothing. I mean, it's changed it in a way uh, that has empowered the athlete. Now they're transferring, the transfer portal's a lot more active, and there is much more movement of players because the players have been empowered. But imagine that the draft was abolished in NFL and NBA. There'd be so much upheaval, I think, that people fear because all of a sudden these teams in the NFL and NBA, they would have to start, establishing junior academies and recruiting 14, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, developing them themselves, and it would just, I think, cause so much stress and upheaval to the people and the team owners especially, that I think that's why it would get a lot of pushback.
And even if they did what you're saying that happens in soccer, if the worst team was the worst and they either got kicked to the minor leagues or, like you said, people at the head office heads are getting chopped off because you're clearly not doing your job, that might change. Even if it wasn't like the draft changed that much, but if it was just the switch of you're the best team, so you get first pick, that would just that would change the accountability, like you were saying, in the head office. It would force people to be much better at their jobs.
Yeah, and but the whole thing is, it's not about the draft itself. Like it shouldn't be about who's the best or who's the worst.
Mm.
The draft itself, I think, is illegal and it's outdated, and so there shouldn't be a draft. It shouldn't, the way it's structured is kind of like irrelevant because it shouldn't be there in the first place. You shouldn't force players to basically. I always use the analogy, imagine in the legal profession, if you went through law school and the Bar Association said, well, if you want to be a lawyer, you not only have to go to college, when you finish, you have to enter this lawyer draft, and the best lawyers from Harvard and Yale, you guys are going to go first pick to, first, second, third, fourth, and down the chain. But the worst law firms in America are going to have the top draft picks, starting with the very worst and working their way down. Like, imagine that. Does that seem fair?
So if I get this clear, you're advocating for a recruitment model only.
Who, me?
Yes, you.
Yeah, I'm saying the whole draft should be abolished.
Okay.
Actually, I'll take a step back. I wouldn't. I think here's where I stand. I think the draft should be optional. I think players should be allowed to say, I'm the top, say the top 50 players in college going to the NBA or the NFL. Everyone should be allowed to negotiate their own contract at any time. For those that haven't, they should have the option of nominating themselves to go into a draft. And then basically you're saying, listen, I couldn't find someone, or I couldn't come to an agreement with someone. You know what? If you want to send me to the Cleveland Browns, I'll go to the Cleveland Browns. That's how it should be. It should be optional. What do you think, Trevor?
I don't know what. So I always say about certain things. I say people can have an opinion, but sometimes, like in this context, there's probably people smarter than me that work in these big sports, with these big sports leagues that would be able to come up with a better model that abolishes the draft, but still allows. Because I think the draft is good for players that are especially in like the MLB draft where there's 20 rounds, or and they have a different antitrust protection based on like a Supreme Court case, but that's irrelevant. Um, and then the NFL draft at least has 7 rounds. I think it benefits certain players that might not get exposure without the NFL draft. They go to the combine, they work out. It might help them. But I think, like you said, if you take the top 50 players in college football and tell them like, look, you guys can go and it's a free market. Sign with whoever you want, and then like you said, it's optional. Then I think that might be a better model. However, I think just like keeping the draft at all would still kind of raise the same concerns, and people might still have the same issues. So just make it a free market. It's a free market everywhere else, and we allow the NFL Players Association, MLBPA, whoever it is, to collectively bargain for the rights of people that aren't even a part of their union yet. And I understand for certain, they're trying to protect their veterans in the sport, but if we don't have if Cooper Flagg isn't at the NBA Players Association meeting and sitting there advocating for his college fellows, then what are we supposed to do when it's just all veterans advocating for their own rights? It doesn't protect people that are younger, and they've gone through it, but doesn't mean that there's not ready for a change.
I didn't realize sports have a union, like union workers. Is that how they say? Really?
Every professional sport has one.
I did not know that. Huh.
It's called the CBA, the Collective Bargaining Agreement.
And there was, I know we didn't really touch base on it, but we talked a little bit about have players ever really pushed back outside of like the very famous cases, like Kurt Flood was an MLB one where he was pushing back against free agency. Yazoo Smith was pushing back basically against his own rights for trying to enter early, and Maurice Claret. In 2011, there was an NFL lockout. And basically, the players and the owners were unable to collectively bargain for the new 2011 collective bargaining agreement. So what the players decided to do was they decertified the union and said that the Players Association no longer represents us. Then they filed an antitrust case against the owners and the NFL. It ended up, ultimately it settled, which is like the worst thing in the world because it settled and nothing really came of it. But it didn't settle until there was the decision where at the district court level, they said that the players, despite no longer being part of the union, were represented through the last 2 years of the collective bargaining negotiations, and because of that, they said that they were still represented by that union. There was a dissent in that case, though, from a different judge that said that once they decertified, they are no longer represented, and that the case should have been able to move forward. Ultimately, it settled. The players were happy with what they were negotiating for, and we haven't had a significant lockout since.
Wow. I did not know about that one. So, yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's interesting.
Yeah, so I would say one of the best things would be to decertify the players' union and then challenge it again in court. hope for the best that you get a panel of judges wherever you're making the challenge that agree that because you decertified that you're able to bring antitrust issues. Now, not the antitrust issues they were bringing were about salaries, salary caps, free agency, but had nothing to do with the draft. So again, it was kind of missing the key points that we're talking about today. However, it was the first time that someone tried to bring an antitrust violation against these major sports corporations.
Wow, interesting. Last question. I want to get your opinion. Do you ever see this happening? Do you ever see a challenge that will blow up the whole draft in NBA, NFL?
I'm an optimist. I would love to say yes, and I'm gonna stand on that. I'm gonna say yes. I think the biggest thing you're gonna see is we're seeing it at the college level already. We're seeing that despite the fact that players can sign for any amount of money, whether it's from boosters, whether it's from endorsements, they'll go to the most random colleges now. So now Alabama might be getting recruits because it's historic, but it's only been a few years. So in college football, you see people like Colorado, for example. They were going for Deion Sanders, and they were going for enough. There was enough money there because Colorado boosters were backing Deion. I think that once you start seeing schools that aren't normally in the top 25 or in the college playoffs start making those pushes, then we realize that even though this is an open market, that the best players aren't going to the best schools. They're still going to any school that can possibly offer them the best package. And if we have at the professional level in the NFL, if everyone has equal salary caps, then it really necessarily shouldn't be an issue, especially if you're able to give free money. So if I want to go spend $500 million on Patrick Mahomes, but now all of a sudden the rest of my team is bad. Well, that's what you want to do. So whether we want to go sign, like you said, Caleb Williams, there are teams in the NFL right now that could use Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels that are probably a quarterback away, and their team is way better around them, but they're not able to negotiate that. So I think you will see it eventually once the college model starts to flip upside down, and it's only still very young, that college
Yeah.
model. But I think in the next decade or so, you're going to see very random schools getting these 5-star recruits and competing.
Yeah.
Now, Trevor, I do have a question. Tell me about your tattoos. You're a professional man. I love when I see professional people with
Oh, I have
tattoos,
I have a lot of
visible tattoos.
I have a lot of tattoos. Like I have a full
I
sleeve and
noticed.
tattoo. I have
Yeah.
my nose pierced. I know my mother wasn't very happy about it when I first got it. She goes, "You're never going to get a job. No one will take you seriously." I haven't had that issue. I've taken it
I
very
love
seriously.
that.
So,
I love that for you. I have a buddy who owns his own bodyguard company and has for decades, and like neck tattoos, tattoos everywhere. And he's like, I have protected the president of the United States, like a lot of high end people. And he's like, no one has ever had an issue. And I love that. Like, it's not limiting when it doesn't have to be. So I love that.
yeah, and I think even just in terms of our conversation, times changed. I mean, I couldn't, attorneys wouldn't have been able to do this 20 years ago, and people started to probably press the norm a little bit. And
Mhm.
now that college sports are doing that, the transfer portal's wide open. You can pay athletes. Again, people are going to press the norm until there's significant change. So I think just for young athletes anywhere who watch this or anyone that is interested in this, just keep advocating for yourself, keep advocating for your rights, and keep pushing for better. If we don't and we stay complacent, then nothing's going to change.
Well said. Great final note to end on, Trevor. Thank you so much for being part of Glad to Talk Sports. What a great conversation. What fascinating insights you've provided today. Hope to have you on again soon. Thanks so much.
What a great guy.
Yeah. That's the first time I've officially met him. I've spoken to him on the phone before, I think, and then I did an interview. I think we did it over the phone when I interviewed him for Sports Business Journal. That was 3 years ago. And like I said, he was one of the only people that I found on the internet that voiced an opinion about the draft being illegal, immoral, whatever you want to call it. And again, it was him and another employment lawyer that wasn't even a sports lawyer that I interviewed. That's how little this whole topic is given in this country, which just fascinates me.
I think, like he said, people love sports. They don't care how the sausage gets made. They think it's great. They don't want to know. They don't care to know. It's like hot dogs. It's like la 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 la. I like my pickle relish and my mustard and my ketchup or whatever. Like it's delicious, even though when you find out how it's made, you're like, that's terrible, So I guess people just like he
And
said
they
they
love the process. What's fascinating about
yeah.
the draft now, especially the NFL draft, which is coming up this month in April, its its ratings have gone through the roof. Like it's like 20 million people watch it, hundreds of thousands. Like the city that hosts the draft, it's worth like $1 billion to the city because there's hundreds of thousands of people coming in. And again, I'm looking around going, is it just me? And I guess it is for now. Like you're gonna go to a city and spend $10,000 and join 100,000 people waiting for the commissioner to open an envelope and say, this team selects this guy. And then, yay. And then you celebrate. And then football season's still 5 months away. And it's like, what is happening here?
It's the not the tradition of it, the celebration of it,
Yeah.
the like almost anything if you build it up enough, people are drawn to it. So it's and people
Yeah. And
like you
again,
said,
it's
they
like,
love sports and football is
yeah, but
everything to
they
people.
don't know any different. Like, why would
Yeah.
they? Like, I only know it because I'm an Australian European that has been in the soccer world, and like I built my whole profession around recruitment. And
Mhm.
it wasn't, hey, I'm representing this soccer player, and I am his agent. I don't know where the hell this guy's going to end up. Like, what? That's not even in my realm of thinking. So that's the way I'm wired. Like I had to literally, when I started out, and I wasn't even planning to be a sports agent because I was, playing soccer myself, and then I stopped playing in my mid 20s, and I wanted to help my best friend go play in the top leagues of Europe. So I took it upon myself to be his agent and to promote him and to go door knocking to clubs in Europe and say, hey, you got to look at this guy, you got to see this video. And 100 teams said, no thanks, no thanks, he's terrible, he's not good enough, whatever. And finally, I found someone that will give him a tryout, and then, they said, sure, we'll take him. And then we negotiated a contract. And that's how recruitment worked to me. And then I represented many, many, many other players. So this whole system of, I've got a guy that's got talent. I'm his agent. And these guys do have agents, when they go to the draft, they've all got agents. But I don't even know why, because the agent, no one can, apart from the team drafting, has a say in where this guy's going and how much is going to be paid, because rookie deals are set in stone. Like, what the hell is the agent doing there getting his commission for doing nothing? It's crazy.
It makes me want to watch that movie again. Now I can't think of it.
Jerry
What
Maguire.
Yes. It made because now I'm thinking, man, he seemed to be pushing for something, and the guy, I think he was an older compared to, if you're in that the league. I mean, wasn't he like an older?
I know that was his client. That's a great question. Yeah. So Tom Cruise's character, Jerry Maguire, he kind
Yeah.
of had both. He had the established older guy that did have negotiating ability because he was not a rookie and he was in his kind of later stages of his career.
Hmm.
Still subject to a salary cap in terms of how much the team can give him. But that's where an agent has leverage, and if the guy's playing better and he has the freedom of movement. So if he's coming out of contract and he's not restricted like a rookie is, then Jerry Maguire can be Jerry Maguire, and the player plays better. He can leverage the fact that he is coming out of contract and can go to other teams and say, okay, we have several teams, but no one else really wanted to sign his client, Rod Tidwell, and so he was limited in that capacity. But on the other side, he had the guy going into the draft, and again, there is a bit of negotiating in terms of an agent can kind of like help facilitate, I guess, a little bit of leeway in terms of movement. In the movie, it was like you're going to surf or ski. It's either San Diego or Denver. So behind the scenes, you can kind of say, well, he really doesn't want to go there and he won't be happy if he does go there, but I can connect you with another GM that will trade, and so it's kind of not the same thing. But yeah, that was a very accurate reflection on how drafts can be. Mm, I don't even want to call manipulated, kind of massaged is a better word. But yeah, it's a fascinating topic, especially that first contract and the actual entry into NBA and NFL, which, as we just discussed, I think it's a matter of time before a player challenges it in court.
Hmm. It'll be interesting on what grounds, like Trevor said. Like you'd really have to have a strong case, and whatever you
Yeah.
decide to do, it better be unshakable.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. It could be, something like age discrimination. So that one I don't think, has been challenged.
Mm-hmm. Well, very cool. Like I said, now I want to go watch Jerry Maguire because now I feel like I'm going to be way
I want to go
more
watch Jerry
educated
Maguire.
watching that right now from a different perspective than the love story because that's the part that I cared about. So,
No, that's that, and that movie. I'm going to age myself, but that movie came out when I was just starting out to be an agent, and
oh,
I had my first client, and we had similar dynamics, between Jerry Maguire and Rod Tidwell, his crazy, outlandish character, and we were on a plane together, going to see if we can, secure this contract. And Jerry Maguire is a phenomenal movie, and it is so true to life in so many ways.
well, that's cool. Well, and Tom Cruise is an amazing actor. Did you know
Yeah.
one of my favorite movies of all time is Rock of Ages? And I saw it. And one, I'm not usually a musical person. So I remember I went with a buddy of mine who has since passed. So um, thinking of my buddy. And it was he's like, "No, let's just go see this movie." And I was blown away at how good it was. And then I also, after the fact, read that Tom Cruise refused to have someone sing his parts. He wanted to sing all his own parts. So he did a ton of
Wow.
lessons and like he did his own everything. And I was like, this man is so dedicated to his craft. It is unreal. I mean, the Scientology I'm not really down with, and some people think he's like arrogant. And I'm like, well, he's kind of earned it, you know? So, but anyway, I was just, to me, I'm like, this is someone, no matter how you think about him, he is dedicated to his craft, and I give him his flowers for that.
Yeah, I agree. I love watching Tom Cruise movies,
Yeah.
and yeah, Mission Impossibles and all those movies. I saw actually a preview for the latest one coming out this summer, so that should be good. The
I'll
latest
be
Mission
there.
Impossible.
I'll be there. Well, this is awesome. I appreciate you educating me on all this because I learn every day from you. This is good.
And yeah, I love your input and your insight. Like I said, you've asked some great questions, and just the way you kind of interpret it is, I think, will be relatable to a lot of people. And again, even like most sports savvy people don't even think in these terms, in terms of like, is the draft? Like, you're messing with the draft now, Miro? Like, what are you, the Grinch that stole the draft? I'm like, sure, why not? I have to be.
Yeah, right? Don't mess with a good thing.
Yeah, so that was a great discussion. And we'll end on that. We're gonna have another great one, kind of like a progression from this, and we're gonna talk about just you know front office mismanagement and just how fans overlook that and continue to support teams like the Dallas Cowboys, who are the number one
I was gonna say,
rated.
let's get into that because I am
Yeah.
like as I told you, my brother that was my brother's favorite team when we were growing up, and he would literally cry when they would lose. Like he was physically upset when the Cowboys didn't win, and I thought, I don't get it. It's just a sports
Is he
thing.
still as passionate?
No, no. When Emmett
Why? I
Smith,
want to know why. I want to know why.
because when Emmett Smith retired, he lost interest in the players.
Wow. So
Yeah.
he was more of an Emmett Smith fan than a
He was
Dallas
a
Cowboys fan.
huge Emmett Smith fan. Yeah. So
That
I feel like
changes it.
he kind of lost interest when he retired. And then being from Wisconsin, he just got on the Packer bandwagon. He's been to games. He's had customers give him
So he's a
box.
Packers fan now.
Yes, yes. And customers have generously given him box seats and like so
Oh,
now
wow.
he goes and he like parties and he's yeah. So and I think I mean it's like a 2.5 hour drive, so it's fun to just go to a game. And
See, I love that. And that's going to be our next discussion, because
okay.
it's going to be basically fan accountability. So I used to be like so loyal to certain teams. And then I became a FIFA agent, and then these teams weren't paying me. I was getting paid by other teams. So I'm like, to hell with them. I don't like, I grew up a Manchester United fan, and then I'm getting great money from teams like Bayer Leverkusen in Germany who are playing against Manchester United. And I'm like, screw Manchester United. My money's coming from Bayer Leverkusen. So it just blew up this whole loyalty to teams connection that I had. And I love the fact that your brother's gone from a Cowboys, because that rarely happens.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we're going to talk about. And
like I said, I think his dedication was more to the player than the
Yeah.
entire team. And I'd have to ask him, but it just felt like his interest dropped off significantly when Emmitt Smith retired.
yeah, and they also kind of dropped off a cliff in terms of their on-field success. And but this is what I want to talk about. Why the hell are the Cowboys the most valuable franchise in the world in any sport, and they are the least successful in 20 years? And we're going to discuss that next week.
That'll be a good one to share with my
We
brother.
might have to get your brother on.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he's made that transition that very few fans have made.
I'll ask him if he would do it. I'd have to actually have him use technology.
Yeah.
I don't even
Sounds
know.
like a bit
I
of a
don't think he owns
recluse.
a
Good luck.
laptop. I don't
What's
think he
that?
owns a laptop, Miro. I'll have to have him use like,
Okay.
his daughter's laptop or something.
That could be a challenge.
That would be awesome, though. It'd be I would be curious to hear his opinion on that, because I like I said, from the just being kids, I don't quite remember why he made the switch. But yeah, now he's like full Packer fan. So
Well, check his technology, because we may need him next week.
okay, I will. I'll ask him.
All right, that was awesome. Awesome, Morgan.
Thanks. I appreciate you.
Sometimes I sleep, sometimes it's not for days. The people I meet always go their separate ways. Sometimes you tell the day by the bottle that you drink. At times when you're alone, all you do is think, Dalai Lama, I'm a cowboy on a steel